Welcome back, everyone. Well, it's the end of cabin month here, where I've been giving you all kinds of information about off-grid living and cabin life. So today I want to answer your questions that you had. Thank you guys so much for all the comments. Stay tuned. So I've been really overwhelmed with all the positive responses that I've got on the last 4 videos for my cabin month here in September. And yes, fall is arriving here at the cabin. The leaves are coming down. Dare I say it, we're starting to see a few little mushrooms come out, although it is pretty dry still. Some of you asked why there is an old work glove screwed to the door here at the shower house. Well, that's quite a simple answer. Last fall we had an accident here at the cabin. Someone was helping us building the shower house here, and they injured themselves. They were using a small circular saw, wearing those gloves, and unfortunately the saw caught the glove and caught the person's tip of their finger. It was a bad situation. It was an emergency here at the cabin. Thankfully those kind of work accidents are few and far between, but they can happen out here. Thankfully the individual's fine. I did some first aid here, and thankfully the fingertip wasn't sort of removed, but certainly there was quite a large gash in there from the saw blade. So what we needed to do was get that individual to the hospital so they could have an x-ray, make sure the bone wasn't affected, and then get some stitches to kind of put the skin back together again. So the glove is a stark reminder to be very, very careful out here. Things can happen, even with most experienced people working with tools. Sudden things can happen. So that glove's there just temporarily for now, but it is to remind us to be really careful. Above me right here, you can also see the saw blade that caused the damage. Some of you asked what the composting toilet's going to be like. Well, it's going to be pretty simple. Just going to use one of these pails. We have a lot of them that we use around here at the cabin for various things. I'm going to coat it with Never Wet inside so that things can be cleaned up fairly easily. And then the waste goes in the bucket, and also there'll be peat moss that goes in there. And you can use preferably sort of a wet peat moss, a wet organic mixture, because that will sort of seal over the waste so that there's no minimal odor. I haven't decided if I want to do urine diversion yet. There are some hacks you can do online with a 20-liter pail, those little Home Depot pails or whatnot, to divert it and put it into some kind of like another part of the composting system, and just have the dry waste. We're also going to have the venting that goes from the toilet all the way up through the roof with a constant Sunmar fan venting. So that will make a very easy compostable toilet. After when the bucket gets nearly full, the waste will be taken to an area on our site here where we have the old toilet. That'll become our composting area. So the waste will go into that pit. We add a particular mixture of bacteria to that called Septibac. And what happens there is it's mixed with that, the waste and the peat, and it begins to compost. Usually 3 years we've experienced that the composting is complete. After that, it becomes a rich, dark humus. Pail obviously goes in underneath this toilet seat here. And it's easily removed because this basically lifts up and you can remove the bucket from underneath. There's a really good book out there. I think it's called Humanure. I'll put a link down below, or you can message me for it. And basically it tells you how to set up these kind of toilets, and they're very, very efficient and inexpensive. Here's some more questions that you guys have. So I had some questions about the shower house build. One was, how am I going to heat the water in the winter? And I think Dave Wilcox Jr. had a really good solution for that, is to have sort of a small tank inside the shower house and maybe heat that during the winter. The alternative I may have right now is just to heat up some water in a pot, put it in the reserve tank, and then have a way of hooking that up to the shower so we could have a shower in the winter. I haven't decided how I want to heat the barrel for the winter. Right now I think this year we're going to drain the plumbing until we figure things out, but I do like the idea of a small, a tank inside. Maybe it's heated by propane. That might be a good idea as well. So I think that's what the plan's going to be for now, to have a tank inside the shower house that's either heated on its own with a propane heater, or we're going to have to heat the water, say on our little gas stove, bring it into the shower house, and then use my good old-fashioned USB chargeable pump with the shower head that can go in the stall. Parallel Burrito asked if we were going to have a sink or a heater in there. Probably put a propane heater in there for now, maybe the kerosene heater. And also for the sink, what we're going to do is get a little set, probably from Home Depot, that has a laundry basin in it and a cabinet set, and that'll be plumbed in to the regular plumbing for the cabin. Again, for the winter, we'd have to have a bucket underneath that would sort of pump up the water through the tap, In the summer, it's going to come directly from the rain barrel. Joanna asked if I would be living in the off-grid property all year, and no, right now I'm not. There may be some plans to do that in the future. Stay tuned, but right now we're just sort of working on our cabin in the shower house, and it will be a seasonal dwelling. So if you asked how I figure out the price of the land on that property that I had to say no to because it was way overvalued, well, there's certainly different ways you can do that. I'm very familiar with the area. Our land was appraised before and priced appropriately, and I know what I get taxed on that and the percentage of the how much the land is worth as sort of how my taxes are based, and I know the percentage of that. So it's just a strictly mathematical equation to figure out what land should approximately be, because I'm very close to that other property. Also, there are some websites online. If you're looking for farmland, you can check out, there's some websites out there that just tell you by province approximately what farmland is worth per acre. So if you're looking for a farm, for example, there is a website that helps you get that information. I'm just going to check here, and I think it's called Farm Canada Credit. I looked that up. So if you're looking for farmland, that's what would tell you sort of per region, even in the province, like how much farmland goes for. Sometimes you can get some backdoor information from MPAC if someone else gives you that information, which is how they assess properties here in Ontario. Also, I'm sure there's lots of companies, you can Google it online, how much is my house worth and that kind of stuff. You can kind of get a general, I think you have to pay a certain amount to kind of find out approximately how much, a piece of land or property is worth. But for me, it's pretty easy. You can just do a strict calculation on what the taxes are for the region. I have also a ballpark idea of what most properties go for per acre for that kind of usage. So I knew right off the bat something was wrong with that other property. And on that topic, Mallory asked, how did you find the land that you have now? And funny thing is, we were camping in the region for years and years, really loved it. And, we started looking online. So not really looking but along, the side of the road for sale signs, but we actually started looking on online classifieds, mainly Kijiji. And we found this property for sale. So it was basically a private sale, which, you got to do your homework with that, as I've mentioned before. But that was how we found the property, and we've never regretted our decision. I was also asked about the geographical information systems information, how I found out about, what the property was like, sort of how it was zoned, if there's crown land in the area. Certainly you can probably go online and Google your township or your state, your province, and Google that with GIS in the search line. And sometimes townships will have all that data online. It was pretty easy for me to go online to Google that, and a site came up, and it was a public site. Now there are professionals that can access sort of the back page of those kind of websites, but it's pretty easy. It told me exactly where the crown land was, where environmental protection areas were, where rivers were, if there's any aggregate zoning in the area. Sometimes you can call Northern Development and Mines and find out if there's any stakes on any of the mineral rights or anything on your property. So you just have to do a lot of digging, and because everybody on my channel is from sort of different locations, I can't give you specifics, but you might want to just check with the local township where your property is, even phoning the local district office there. They may be able to help you get that information. JDK asked how long my propane tanks lasted. Well, I would say a good 30 winter days for those two 40-pounders. Yeah, it does chew through the propane. If you're interested in propane heaters, I was asked about some economical ones. I mean, the one I have now is pretty economical and it's worthwhile. It's the Martin heater. The setup and install is fairly easy, but I did have someone come out to do the gas connection, which is the kind of the pricey part. But if you need to know how many BTU you need to heat an area, there is a website out there. The website is simplex.ca, and you can sort of type in the average temperatures, and how many BTU you need, the size of your building, the type of insulation you have in there to know exactly how much propane you'll need. So yeah, that's how long it lasts, about 30 really cold winter days. And I still have actually a third of a tank left, so I'm going to top them up before winter comes. Again, I don't live off-grid full-time. If I did, I'd definitely figure out a huge system to kind of come in. I'd also put other appliances in that run on propane, like I'd get a big tank. But, for our use, that's fine. I mean, honestly, I'd probably even put in a couple 100-pounders, give us a lot more time over the winter. During the flank seasons, it doesn't turn off and on that much, but when we're dealing with minus 35, sometimes wind chills up to minus 40, that propane is going to get chewed up pretty quickly, as it will with a lot of the propane heaters. So just be aware of that. True North Living, Norm, asked me if I had plans, if I were to live off-grid long-term on the property, would I live in the cabin as it exists now, or would I build another home? And this also ties into another question I got about, is living permanently off-grid in Ontario illegal? Well, there are a lot of rules and regulations. To live permanently off-grid in Ontario, I couldn't just live in the cabin. I'd have to have a building of a particular size. It would have to be set up to services, so I'd have to somehow either generate my own power or hook into the grid and have a septic system and a well at least. That's just for sanitation. Like, they don't want people living 365 and sort of soiling the environment and, you know, not having the essentials, you know, like hydro and stuff. So, yeah, technically you gotta be really careful. It's based on the municipality, what they recommend or what they legislate. Basically, you have to have, and again, all of our buildings have to be inspected. Even my cabin was officially inspected. It's in as a hunt camp right now, because normally I'd have to build a house and accessorize it with a shed or another outbuilding, but because it's legislated as a sort of a fish camp or a hunt camp, then I can get away with a lot. But anyway, so yeah, Norm, if I was to live off-grid full-time, I would need to I'd have to build a house and hook it into services or run it off solar or figure something out. But I couldn't just live like I do now at the cabin. It is insured as a seasonal property as well. So, and that's what they expect, is I'm only there a few of the seasons or just a few times in the winter, that kind of thing. Year round, different ballgame in Ontario. And finally, Andreas from Off Grid Sweden was commenting on my top 5 cabin essentials, and I think a few other people mentioned it too, would cell connection and sometimes internet connection be a requirement? It's an essential thing nowadays to have, even though we're technically off grid. And you know, there's a lot of folks in my region that live there permanently and felt really disconnected and from the cellular service network, and they were. So there's been a huge push to put in more towers, and I think this is a good thing. We were completely off the cellular network when we bought the property, and then my phone rang one day at the cabin. I thought, that's kind of weird. So I think it's good for emergency purposes, so I don't think it makes you any less off-grid to have connection to cellular internet. Certainly it's sort of nice to be completely disconnected, but you know, it's becoming essential nowadays. It really is. So that's a really good point to bring up. You know, if there's an emergency, like I said, we had that saw incident, it'd be nice to be connected to get 911 service, or even a car accident or something like that. It's just becoming more an essential of daily life. So I don't think that, you know, takes away from you being off-grid. I think it's smart, the connectivity, especially if you're off-grid 365. I really want to thank you all for giving me all kinds of suggestions for my things I hadn't quite figured out yet for the cabin. So I really appreciate that. I'm going through every single one of your comments. I think I had over 100 of them, which is amazing. So look forward to seeing some of the changes that I make here at the cabin. Hey, I may even use your idea. Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. I hope you enjoyed me answering questions about the cabin and off-grid life. And never fear, just because September is over doesn't mean that you won't see any more videos about the cabin. There's lots more videos about the cabin to come your way in the fall, winter, spring, and summer. I hope you guys have a wonderful week as always. Take care.